So welcome everyone. In this video we will be talking about diazotization titrations and then we will see its principle and how do we determine the endpoint in these kinds of titrations, and then in the last we will see its applications. So now let us begin. So firstly we must know what do we understand by the term diazotization. Okay, so the word azo I've written on the top. The word azo always relates to the nitrogen atom, and we know that di, okay, here di, it always means 2. Okay, so diazo over here means N2. So I hope this thing is clear to you. So these are diazotization titrations. Now let us understand these in detail, and then you will surely know what do we do in these kinds of titrations. So the conversion of primary aromatic amine, okay, primary aromatic amine is that in which one hydrogen of this ammonia molecule, let me just draw. Okay, this is our ammonia molecule. In this when one hydrogen of this ammonia molecule is being replaced by an aromatic ring, so that becomes our primary aromatic amine. Okay, so when this primary aromatic I will draw it the other way. I will draw it like this: aromatic ring, and then over here NH2. Okay, so when the this primary aromatic amine is converted to diazonium compound, that kind of titration is known as diazotization titration. Okay, so this is being converted into a diazonium compound. In this the aromatic ring remains like that, and instead of NH2 here attaches N2 along with any halide ion. Okay, so this is our diazonium compound. So when this primary aromatic amine is being converted into this diazonium compound, that kind of titration is known as diazotization titrations. Okay, so I hope this basic thing is clear to you. Now let us move on further. So the process was first discovered in 1853 and was applied to the synthetic dye industry. These kind of titrations are very much important in the dye industry, and we know that dye is any substance which produces any kind of color. Okay, so the reaction mechanism was first proposed by Peter Greason. Now let us see what is the use of these diazotization titrations. Uh, use So they are used for determination of compounds which possess primary aromatic amino groups. And in the last we will see some other few applications of these kinds of titrations. Now let us talk about its principle. So here is the principle of diazotization titrations. So it says that the aromatic amino group is reacted with sodium nitrite in cold acid solution to form diazonium salts. This principle we will understand it in two steps, and then you will see that how exactly our aromatic group is being converted into diazonium compound. Okay, so in step 1, firstly let us see what happens. So here is the step 1. So in step 1 what happens that it involves the addition of sodium nitrite to hydrochloric acid, which results in the formation of nitrous acid. So first step basically involves the formation of nitrous acid, and how it is formed by the reaction of sodium nitrite with hydrochloric acid. So firstly in our solution what do we have? We will take hydrochloric acid, and in that we will add sodium nitrate, and finally we will get our nitrous acid. Okay, now let us see the step 2. So this is step 2. In step 2 what happens that the nitrous acid which is formed in this step 1, it diazotizes the aromatic amino group. What does this mean? That here is our aromatic amine, this is our primary aromatic amine. So this nitrous acid in the presence of hydrochloric acid and at very low temperature, that is in cold solution, forms diazonium salt, in which this NH2 group is being converted into N2 positive plus Cl negative, and this halide ion it came from this acid, okay, along with the formation of water. So this is the basic principle of our diazotization titration, in which this nitrous acid converts our primary aromatic amine into our diazonium compound in very low temperature. That is what this theory of principle was saying. So one thing over here important is that this let me just erase it first. Okay, so the reaction is carried out in an ice bath between the temperature range is 0 to 5 degrees Celsius. So very much low temperature is very much necessary for this reaction to occur, because at higher temperature some other compound is being formed. So I hope this principle is clear to you. So now we will move on further to see that how do we determine the end point in these kinds of titrations. Okay, so now let us see that part. So here is the endpoint determination. So there are two ways by which we can determine the endpoint in these kinds of titrations, and we will talk about both of them just now. Okay, so now firstly let us talk about the first method. So at endpoint, exactly what happens, that excess nitrous acid is formed and observed by the formation of deep blue color with starch iodide paper. This is the first step. Okay, so at endpoint excess nitrous acid is formed. This is what happens at endpoint, and we can determine the endpoint by the formation of deep blue color by using starch iodide paper. Now let us understand that how exactly do we get this deep blue color. So what happens, that the starch iodide paper which we are using, okay, it is prepared by immersing a filter paper in starch mucilage and potassium iodide. So you can say that this starch iodide paper is made up of starch mucilage and potassium iodide. Okay, these are the two compounds. Now what happens, that the color change of the indicator paper is due to the following chemical reaction. Now let us see how which chemical reactions take place that finally we get our deep blue color. So firstly what happens, that when we will immerse our starch iodide paper in our solution, okay, what happens, that this potassium iodide of our starch iodide paper, it will react with our hydrochloric acid which is already in the solution to form hydrogen iodide. Okay, this is first reaction. Now this is the second reaction taking place, which is our step 1, in which our sodium nitrite was reacting with hydrochloric acid to form nitrous acid. Okay, so at end point what is happening, that when the nitrous acid is present in excess, what happens, that this excess nitrous acid, it reacts with this hydrogen iodide to liberate iodine gas along with the formation of other compounds. Okay, so exactly simply we can say that iodine gas is being liberated by these reactions. So when this iodine gas is liberated, what happens, that the iodine formed reacts with this starch mucilage to give blue color. Okay, so just now I said that this starch, let me just erase this one, that this is starch iodide paper, it is made up of starch mucilage and potassium iodide. Now the iodine which is liberated, it reacts with this starch mucilage to give us blue color, and that blue color marks the end of the titration. So I hope this thing is clear to you, that how exactly do we get this endpoint. This is the first way of getting the endpoint, that when the endpoint is there, there is an excess of nitrous acid in the solution, and that excess can be determined by the change in color by using our starch iodide paper. Now let us see the second method. So now this is the second method. Sorry, just this is the second method. So the endpoint can also be determined by a dead stop endpoint and potentiometric technique. So now potentiometry is another topic in the syllabus of pharmaceutical analysis, which we will see in other video. Okay, so we will not go in very much detail about that in this video, so it is just basic only. So in this method what we do, a pair of platinum electrode is immersed in the titration liquid. Okay, so I hope this is clear to you, that we use a pair of platinum electrode and we immerse them in the titration liquid, and then the polarization of electrode occurs when small voltage about this much is applied across the electrodes and no current flows. Okay, so when we will dip our platinum electrodes, for example this is our solution, and we will dip the pair of electrode in this one, so the electrodes become polarized, which means that no current will flow. And we have also connected this to a galvanometer, and the galvanometer, from that we can see that no current is flowing at a very low voltage. Okay, so now what happens, that at the end point what happens, that there is liberation of excess nitrous acid, and because of this excess nitrous acid, what happens, that the electrodes become depolarized, and the depolarization of electrode result in the flow of current, and when the current start flowing, there is reading in the galvanometer, and that marks the end point. Okay, from that reading we can see the end point. So I hope this is clear to you. It is just simple only, that we have to see the flow of current through the galvanometer. Okay, so this was the second way by which we can see the endpoint in our diazotization titrations. So now let us move on further to the applications of these. Okay, so here is the applications. So the very first use of disonium salt was to produce water fast dyed fabrics. Yes, this is the most important use of these kind of titrations, because they result in the formation of a large number of dyes, which are very much important. So a more common process was a paper coated with diazo. So these are also applicable in nanotechnology, and these are used in the preparation of hydrocarbons, aryl halide, aryl cyanide, and aryl hydrazines, and they are used in the assay of sulfur drugs like dapsone, sulfonamides, sulfacetamide, sodium, and sulfadiazine, and they are used in the assay of various drugs like benzocaine, procainamide, Procaine, sodium aminosalicylate, primaquine sulfate. These are just a few examples which I have written. You can find a lot of examples also, other examples also. So these are just a few basic applications of our diazotization titrations, but the most important one is that they are used for the dyed fabrics. Okay, so I hope you like this video, and thank you so much for watching.